You may know Robert Bathurst as Sir Anthony on Downton Abbey. You may also know him from Netflix' The Edge of War. But do you know that he is the narrator of the last eight Louise Penny's audiobooks? Yes, he is Inspector Armand Gamache, and you can meet him today on the Bookaholic podcast. Stay tuned. First of all, I never looked at this but
The consumer is something.
2019. So at the end of this first, you have to deliver channel. Finally, my mother also died of cancer, lung cancer, and entertainment.
I had a chance in that process where you made
Robert Bathurst, welcome to the Bookaholic podcast.
Thank you very much, David.
I am so happy to have you here, and I do believe my audience is going to get quite a thrill from learning more about you. So we're going to just dive right into it. First of all, what came first for you? Was it voice acting or general acting?
Well, what came first was, actually voice in one way. My first professional work was in radio, doing
Yes.
radio comedy, and
Yes.
then went into to stage and did a lot of. I started doing voiceover commercial work as well. I didn't start doing audiobooks till quite late on. So
Okay.
I did stories on the radio and things like that, but the audiobook market I didn't get going on till relatively late in my career.
Yes, yes. And then that was a new thing anyway at a certain point. I can't remember the decade, but you
Yeah,
know, audiobooks was a new thing and that came up, as for technology geared that whole movement. So, of
right.
course it had to be just a little bit later. But
And
yes,
it's so much easier. It's so much easier now. I mean, it used to be with all the tapes and the clanking great sort of cases of tapes, in which you get lost and you're missing missing out whole chapters because they're stuck underneath a car seat, and
yes,
all those other things like
yes.
that. And now, of course, the ease with which one can download an audiobook is great, and one can get going very much more quickly on it.
Most definitely. It is very easy and very simple. Now, I've been a person, and if those who are familiar with my channel, I did a episode with Audiophile magazine, and they introduced me to the Golden Voice actors, and they're very familiar with you, by the way. They say that you are Jewel. Uh, and, I was saying that I'm one of those people that I have to have a book in my hand, you know,
Mm.
um, and that's very important to me. But I did listen to a book earlier this year on Audible, and it was wonderful. It just really carried me away. And I too am from the radio world. I once worked at a radio station, and we all know that radio is the theater of the mind, it creates that. And so, how do you prepare to do your episodes to bring about that vivid imagery that one puts in their minds?
Well, I think the first thing is to regard it as a huge responsibility, because yes, the relationship between the print reader and the author is direct, and then
Yeah.
but if you've got this interloper coming in, you've got this other influence coming in, which is possibly getting in between you and the author, and it may not be an interpretation, it may not be a realization that they would naturally have come to. So you've got to welcome them in and bring them into your own interpretation of those same words. And so it's an
Yes.
enormous responsibility not to put off the listener, and to do
Right.
something which they might perhaps find difficult to accept. So
Yes.
that's the first step. And so you are, I believe, as a narrator of audiobooks, a channel between, well, you are obviously a channel between the author and the listener, and so it's really important to try and not pin them back with vocal gymnastics or anything like that. Is to just simply try and gain from what you read the essence of what the author intended, and
Yes.
the spirit and to make sure that all the ironies and the humor of it or the drama of it read, but without in a way it becoming too obvious that it's being read. You sort of want to engage the imagination or imagine yourself engaging the imagination, if that's not too convoluted way of saying it, of
Yes.
the listener, as a way of connecting with the author's intentions.
Yes. Well, you are the I'm saying celebrated narrator of Louise Penny's wildly popular and famous Inspector Armand Gamache. And how did you become Armand Gamache? What was that process like? Was that did you have to go, do performing with other with other narrators? Was that a competition type of thing? Or how did that all work out that you became him?
There have been 18 Three Pines Inspector Gamache novels, almost one a year that Louise has been writing, and I must acknowledge the reader of the first 10 who's died, who's Ralph Cosham. His talents launched the Three Pines series
Okay.
as an audiobook. I took over for the last 8. And
Yeah.
so it was already established. I don't know the process by which I was chosen. Louise was involved in the casting of it, and so she will have seen or heard things that I'd done.
Yeah.
So there wasn't an open competition, but it landed in my lap, and I have to say I'm so grateful for that having happened.
Yes, most definitely. And, you know, um, I will confess and confide here, I try to be very open to my audience. I have not read any of Louise Penny's books. I did check out The Madness of Crowds. I don't know, different times of the year or different periods of your life, sometimes you just can't get into certain things. So,
Mm.
though, I gave it another shot. I purchased this book this summer and I plan on reading this one. Did you voice All the Devils Are Here?
Yes, and that is the one set in Paris.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's as we every the thing about I'll explain in as crisply as I can what it is about these books which I believe have led to their great success.
Mhm.
Louise has written. She's taken a series of people, a village, a mythical
Wow.
village in Quebec. It's a place which it doesn't exist on the map, and it is peopled by people she regards as lost. And so, in a way, it starts off with human frailty. The fact is that all these people come here, and it is in a form of a sanctuary, really, this village of Three Pines. And all these
Mhm.
people, but sanctuary though it may be, there are an awful lot of murders that happen in Three Pines. But and Inspector Gamache is the head of the Sûreté in Quebec, and he over the last 18 years has had to cope with. But every second book leaves Three Pines and it goes off to somewhere, usually in Quebec. But on the one you have there is All the Devils Are Here is set in Paris, and
Yes.
so it's the challenge for the reader was to try and create all the characters, many of them French, and it's just that was a fair challenge in its own way. But on the other hand, the whole story is set in French-speaking Quebec, so
Yes.
they chose an Anglo reader
Yes.
to take to Gamache, because the idea was that Gamache, I think, had spent some time in Britain, and for whatever reason, and I'm sure the publishers will tell you whatever reason that was, they chose me because I'm not Anglo Canadian, I'm not French Canadian, I'm not North American, and there is a I don't know, there's a quality there which they decided to go with an Anglo reader. But I do accents and I do all the voices. There's sometimes 40
Yes.
different characters in them. So
Yes.
and it's a huge challenge.
Yes, yes, definitely. I'm sure it is. And like you said, it's an enormous responsibility. So it brings me to the first narrator passed away. That was after 10 books. Was there a bumpy road when you recorded the first one? Was the audience receptive to you after the first narrator had passed away, or was it hard to get through?
I mean, he was extremely popular, and he had his following.
Mm.
It was an additional responsibility to be able to add to that, or to add to the numbers, and to bring on the existing fans. Yes, I mean, I'm not a great one for following reviews. I think you tend to lead with the chin a bit when you start looking online as to what people are thinking of you. But
Right.
yes, it was very, it became very quick. Well, Macmillan Audio were very happy with the reaction to the first one that I did, and
Yes.
they've been staying with me for the last 8 years. So yes, presumably the fans of the Three Pines series have carried over. Who knows if
Yes.
all of them have, but I'm no, I'm firmly established as the reader for the time being. I make no presumption.
Yes, yes. Well, 8 is a pretty good record.
Yeah.
Now, what have you learned about Inspector Gamache and the people of Three Pines after narrating 8
Yes.
books?
Well, it's very difficult. Yes, I think if I can, I would say, and my sort of pitch, if I was to pitch this show,
Mhm.
this idea, I would say in as sort of economical a way as possible. I would say it's how to live well in a cruel world. Now
Yeah,
that sounds glib, perhaps, but actually, it's quite a challenge to be able
yeah.
to do
It
that,
is.
because
It
the
is.
world he inhabits is violent and cruel, but there's also a deep underlying goodness. Now, goodness, I believe, is very difficult to dramatize. I think evil is much more easy to dramatize. Everybody can draw well, everybody can attach themselves to a villain's story, but the
Right.
goodness is something, it's sort of almost too ethereal to grasp. It's he is a man who's deeply wise, deeply good, extremely adept at looking after himself physically, but also complicated, and he has his own, difficulties, as do all the other characters like that. He is not in any way perfect, and yet he does embody the spirit of strength, wisdom, and redemption. And it's that very sense of redemption which actually gives one hope in a way at a time when you wonder whether such human goodness does
Right.
exist. If you look at mainstream media, it's sometimes rather difficult to imagine it. And she draws
Yes.
goodness extremely effectively. It is also brilliantly constructed and very, very exciting. And you often wonder,
Yes.
will Gamache and his dearest get out of this terrible situation? And so she does, she spins a fantastic yarn, I have to say.
Wow, wow. Okay, you're drawing me in. You're drawing me in. So, the latest book is called A World of Curiosities. Without giving away any spoilers or anything like that, set the stage for A World of Curiosities for us.
The World of Curiosities, well, it does its first, I think, in first time slip in all the books. It starts before he has met his, I say, sidekick, his assistant
Yeah.
inspector, who becomes his son-in-law, Jean-Guy Beauvoir, who is a great character. But
Okay.
he meets him at his very callow rawness, and at a time of a murder, the murder of a woman who has children. And in time, with the time slips that to the present day, those children
Yes.
are now adult, and the reasons for the death, and the implications, and the who's culpable for them, become apparent. And of course, inevitably, there are lots of deflections, and people come into the village who might be very good, who might have other motivations. She's very good at story is truly going, but all the deflections are totally plausible. They have a
Yeah.
logic to them, and so when I'm recording them, I have a game with the studio manager, the recording engineer, and I always say about halfway through the reading, and then three quarters of the way through reading, and then right to the end, I say, "Who did it? Can't tell me. Who do you reckon did it?" And I've done
Yeah.
that for the last 8 years, and they always get it wrong. So it's it just shows how well constructed they are, and
Yes.
how engaging they are, because you're involved in every strand of the story, and
Yes.
they're beautifully drawn.
Yes, yes. And sidebar, I'm stepping off to the side for a second. You've done other audiobooks of other authors as well, right?
I've done a couple recently in the UK. This one is available in North America. It's sadly not available in my own country in the UK, but it's
Hmm.
some publishing deal. But it's available worldwide and of course in North America. Yes, I've done a recent one on night walking about which has poetry. I like performing verse, and this has verse in it and is a very lyrical. Um, a lyrical description of what it's like to walk at night, how to see in the dark if you
Wow.
when you're walking through the woods. And I've just done one called Goodbye, Mr. Chips, which is a classic
Yes.
British story, which was filmed by Robert Donat many years ago. And it's so I read that one recently. Those are two I've read recently.
Yes, 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 yes. And so now I'm going back to the World of Curiosities and Louise Penny, but the Village of Three Pines. Again, I have only been briefly introduced to the Village of Three Pines. In and of itself, that's a whole world. That has a personality. How would you describe the Three Pines?
Well, Three Pines is a physical place in the story, but it's also a spirit, and
Mm,
it is. Louise is very. I've been interviewing her about it and talking about it, and she talks about it very well. But it is a place where people come to find some level of contentment. Of course, there's all sorts of things go on, and suspicions arise, and there are many flies in the ointment. But
yeah,
it is everyone has in their own way their own version of Three Pines. Everybody has their place where they, if they're lucky enough, and where they can go to, and it might be a state of mind, it might be a physical place. But I think Three Pines, and I think for many people, represents that in the sense that these characters find a place where they can just go yes,
yeah,
not in a smug way, not in a self-satisfied way, but just in a way which gives them spiritual succor. And I
right.
think that I think that's where she's leading us towards, is the fact that we all need somewhere like that.
Yes.
And it's I mean there's a lot of grit in the oyster. You don't it's not all cozy in Three Pines, but
Right.
it is a place where one can go, ah, I found myself, here we are.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, we all need that place, even if it's
That's it.
imaginary.
Even if it's exactly.
Exactly. Now, what is coming up next for Robert? Any more voice acting or regular acting, as I should say?
Well, regular. Here I am in my dressing room of a show that Dolly Parton has written. I'm doing the show
Oh,
tonight. Dolly has Miss Parton has written. She's taken the Dickens's Christmas Carol story, and she set it in Tennessee in 1936,
oh,
when of course the Depression was, where the
yes.
Depression was still raging, where the miners had been killed and the village was taken over. So she's taken the Scrooge and Jacob Marley story, and set it in Tennessee. So
Oh,
and it's a musical, and I've been in my career for quite some time. This is the first musical I've ever done.
oh,
First time I've been working with musical theatre people, and I have a song. I'm playing Scrooge, a Tennessee Scrooge, and I have my song of redemption at the end,
oh,
and and I think it's a perfect translation of Victorian poverty or Victorian London, to
yeah.
take the Scrooge story, to translate it into the area that she knows so well and where she
Yes.
grew up, and to have
Yeah.
Appalachian string band music running with us, with the guitar and the fiddle and the banjo,
Yeah.
and with piano and bass, and it's augmented, and with these wonderful songs that Dolly Parton has written. And it's a Christmas story, and I have to say it's going down a storm here. We've got another show in about an hour's time, and off we go again. And I love doing it every night.
Wow. And this is taking place where?
It's in London on the South Bank, which is an area near the National Theatre,
Oh,
and it's a place called the Queen Elizabeth Hall next to. I mean, it's part of the whole cultural complex on the South Bank in London, and it's tried out in Boston just before the pandemic, and of course everything came to a grinding halt.
oh,
So the
yes, yes.
producers regrouped, and British producers put it on here with Dolly Parton's collaborators
Wow.
and producers, and they're all here, and I think it's launching it. I suspect it'll be playing for many years in the States, and this is the first production, full production they've done of it. And I
Yes.
imagine I imagine it'll be at a theatre near you next Christmas.
Yes, I'm hoping so, because this sounds wonderful, and all the iterations of a Christmas Carol. I've never heard about it setting place during the Depression. That's perfect. It's absolutely perfect.
I think it is, and people, when they talk about it and I tell them about it, they go, "What?" And it's such of an unlikely thing. But then, of course, after about a minute, thinking, they actually it just sort of works as an idea. But
It's
it
brilliant.
isn't. So it's an original idea, and the fact that it comes from her background and imagination and what she knows about that area, it makes it even richer, I believe.
Yes, most definitely. Sounds wonderful.
So,
Well, I know you're certainly add to the wonderful production of that whole story. You certainly are very great at what you do. So thank you, Robert. We appreciate
thank you
you
very
and
much.
all your work. Woo, wow. Fantastic. So if you want to hear more of Robert's wonderful voice and his production of Inspector Gamache, just check out Louise Penny's A World of Curiosities. We'll have the information in the podcast show notes, as well as in the YouTube video description. Robert, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Deirdre, thank you very much. Lovely to speak to you.